So I decided to install my front electric seat harnesses today. As you can see, there's quite a bit of difference between the passenger and driver side. Quite obviously, the passenger side is the longest one because it has to travel across the middle of the car and up into the fuse box, whereas the driver's side has quite a short journey to take. To get the harnesses into the door through those hoses, it's a lot easier if you take the connectors off the end, but pay attention to where the wires go so you can assemble it easier later. I snaked the harness up with a stiff vacuum hose and taped that onto the harness and just pulled it up through the A pillar, and straight through the hose it went with very little resistance, and straight out to the top of the door, paying attention to putting it in the correct location so it doesn't foul the electric window mechanism. And yeah, that's how it sits when it's pulled through completely. Then it was just a case of installing it properly. This is the front electric seat relay harness. When I removed it from the donor car, I didn't actually cut any connections, so it's all plug and play for me to install this. Didn't have to do any soldering, didn't have to do any cutting of anything. It all just laid in and plugged in and worked the first time. I did a bit of a repair to the insulation on the driver's side harness. Just the cloth tape had started to peel off, but nothing major. Passenger side was perfect. Practically all done now. The passenger side ground point I used um, in front of the shifter handle, as you just saw, and the driver's side ground point I used behind the instrument cluster. From memory, that's where they were from the factory. The cables were the right length, so logically that's probably where they went. I then got on to installing the power seat relay harness. The actual wires have numbers on them to tell you which fuses they go to, plus the large positive wire goes to the positive connection under the dash, and there's a ground for the relay that goes to the instrument cluster ground point as well. There's one spade connection that goes to the switch in the driver's side A pillar trim. Now, it doesn't actually go directly to the switch itself. There is an expander plug that sits below the switch, which gives it a lot more switched outputs, because the switch itself only has one terminal that's switched. So this expander module actually gives it another four, and this is what the power seat relay actually plugs into. There's a couple of other things connected to this, presumably the lights and maybe the windows, I don't know.